Okay, last couple examples. Now we're going to FOIL. So we've FOILed binomials before, and it's the same process where we're going to say, we're going to do the first times the first times the last, the two inners, and then the inner times the outer. I never know how the two last, I guess. So we'll start with the 4 and the 5. So 4 times 5 plus the 4 times the radical 3 plus the 5 times the radical 3. And like I said, we'd like to put our whole number in front of the radical. And then lastly, the radical 3 times radical 3. So this here is going to give us 20. We can combine those two terms because they have the same thing under the radical, so it becomes 9 radical 3. And then radical 3 times radical 3 is just radical 9, which really just gives us 3. So it becomes 20 plus 9 radical 3 plus 3. Add the 20 and 3, I get 23 plus 9 radical 3. We'll try that one more time. So let's see. FOIL. First times the first times the outer, the two inners, and the two lasts. I think that's how it goes. So we'll say 3 times 2 plus 3 radical 8. A negative radical 8 times 2 is going to give me a negative because it's a positive times a negative. So I'm going to get a negative 2 times radical 8. Positive times a negative gives me a negative. You got to be careful of these signs. So I'm going to get a negative. And then radical 8 times radical 8. So this will give us 6. We can combine these two middle terms because they both have radical 8. So that becomes 1 radical 8. You don't really have to put that 1 there. Subtraction, radical 8 times radical 8 is really radical 64, which is just 8. So we get 6 plus radical 8 minus 8. So we're going to end up here with negative 2 plus radical 8. Now radical 8 can be simplified, so I can actually simplify this down. This is really 4 times 2. This is 2 times 2. So it's going to be negative 2 plus 2 radical 2 as my final answer. All right, last two examples. We have to be careful in this one. This 9 plus radical 2 quantity squared, you do not distribute that 2, that exponent of 2. This is saying I want to take 9 plus radical 2 times 9 plus radical 2. So I'm multiplying them together. So now I'm going to have to FOIL. So I'm going to take my first times the outer, 2 inner, and the 2 last. So this becomes 9 times 9 plus 9 times radical 2 plus 9 times radical 2 plus radical 2 times radical 2. This is going to give me 81. I can add the two middles. So plus 18 radical 2. Radical 2 times radical 2 is just going to give me 2. So my final answer is 83 plus 18 radical 2. And our very last one. This one just looks a little different because we have a radical here and a radical here. So it just looks a little different when we FOIL it. So we're going to take the first times the first times the last, the two inner, and the inner times, or the two last. So I'm going to get 4 times radical 3 plus 4 times 5. So now I'm going to have a negative radical 3 times a positive radical 3. So negative radical 3 times positive radical 3. And then we have negative radical 3 times 5. Can't do anything with the first one. It just becomes 4 radical 3. 4 times 5 becomes 20. This becomes negative 3. Radical 3 times radical 3 is radical 9, which is 3. And then at the end here, this becomes negative 5 radical 3. We can combine these two, and we can combine these two. So I end up with 17 minus radical 3 as my final. And that should do it. Thanks.